Dr. Lennox Honychurch. Thank you very much, first of all, for speaking with us. You led a discussion at this CTO conference on authenticity and what the authentic product is. Summarize, if you may, first of all, because the research that you have done and how the Caribbean can utilize that sort of information to develop a good authentic product.
Well, the point we were making essentially was that the Caribbean prides itself on giving you the real thing, the real experience. And you've got to follow that through, because in tourism marketing and in delivery, you have got to ensure that you deliver the product that you told people that they were going to enjoy. And if you're going to promote authenticity and you're going to promote the real thing, you have got to ensure that every step of the way, whether it is in the cuisine or whether it's in the historic buildings or in the dances and presentations that are given for the entertainment of visitors, that these things have roots, they have a storyline, and that they are the real thing. Buildings, for instance, to build a, for instance, mock fort and try to pass it off as an 18th century building is not going to hold weight with the average, even the average visitor, because another point we made is that the visitor to the Caribbean today is far more aware and on the ball than, let's say, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And these are the essentials of our delivery, that we have got to ensure that in whatever we do, we have got this weight, this origin of what we are presenting clearly identified, because that is part of the story that goes with the product. And I made the point as well that understanding the history in terms of the sites that we show, understanding the correct, particularly for people who are like bird watchers and botanists. There are many groups that come to the Caribbean interested in this, and we have got to ensure that the tour guides that we have here on the islands and in the different territories are up on the ball as well, you know. The other point we made is that information is readily available. All they've got to do, the visitor, is dip into a smartphone and they will get varied origins of what is being told to them, and the information is readily available to them. They don't depend essentially just on one of the tour guides, tour operators who are delivering the message. So things are more complex in terms of information. It's more readily available, and we in the Caribbean must be up on the ball in relation to the real information that we're giving, background, and particularly since so much of what we offer is historically related, we have got to get the history right as well.
And your research will show then there is that authenticity, that the product is there, doesn't it?
Yes, what I was calling for is that in whatever we do, for instance, plantation houses, that these plantation houses or fortifications or historic cities are restored and maintained in an authentic manner, that they are clearly linked to their origins, so that if you have a building that's 300 years old, it has been maintained and it is being rebuilt in the traditional pattern with the traditional skills. And therefore you can honestly say, here is a building that has been in constant use, you know, since 1660. And that's an important part of the story. I mentioned cities, for instance, like Old San Juan, where it has taken some really kind of strict measures to ensure that everything from the pavements down to the buildings are authentic and they represent the 16th century. And also the colonial city of Santo Domingo, and the efforts that are being made, like places like St. George's, Grenada. Barbados has just got a UNESCO World Heritage rating for Bridgetown, but they are being put under pressure because they have got to ensure that they have got these accreditations. They have got to maintain them by ensuring that they have very strict urban planning laws to be able to, there again, tell the visitor, this is an authentic 17th century city in the Caribbean. Yes, it has gone through change, but its roots are in those days. And this is the life that was lived here. That's the package. That's what they're offering. That's what the person is coming to the Caribbean to witness and to enjoy.
How do you then market that type of authenticity to the potential visitor?
Well, basically, you're telling them it's the real thing. I mean, we have already got hidden here and there in the advertising of the various territories. We've already got that kind of message, you know. I think some years ago, Jamaica had a couple going up the Duns River Falls, and there was this thing saying, as it was meant to be, you know. All of these sort of slogans, the nature island of the Caribbean for Dominica. You know, you can't go and spoil the nature and yet sell it at the same time. You know, that's a mockery. And these are the kinds of messages that we already note within the advertising. But we have got to ensure that that advertising, once the people arrive, that they are not disappointed, that you have not misled them, and that the package that you are offering, that you are saying is nature, history, authentic experiences. It must be, when they arrive in the territory, it must be there fully and clearly and honestly for them to enjoy.
And tell me a little bit your thoughts of this conference. You were there for the first day and literally all of the second day of this thing. Give us your thoughts of this conference.
Well, I think it's a very important theme because there have been problems in the past where visitors have come and been disappointed because it isn't quite what the advertising was. And this is the problem. You know, sometimes we in the islands have these slogans to advertise ourselves, and we get very self-satisfied and we believe our own propaganda. So we say, oh, you know, we are natural and the nature, and yet we fling our rubbish all over the place. So you have got to ensure that that message is understood by the entire community. Another thing that arose during this conference was the emphasis on community tourism, and this helps with involving people, making the money spread more widely into the community, and it also ensures that there's a decrease in crime related to tourism because the people feel they are involved and that their incomes will be damaged if there is any upheaval. This was particularly made in the yachting because our authentic delivery session was in fact taken over by the subject of yachting. And this is valid because the yachties coming down into the islands in all these different coves and bays and villages, of all the tourists, of all the visitors who come to the Caribbean, they are probably the ones that are more directly involved with the community because they are landing on the shores, they're going into shops, they're getting the assistance of people to tie up their vessels. The yachties are really in the most direct contact with the people. And it was valid that this should be raised, that community tourism in yachting areas, in small villages, in areas where there have been problems, should be upgraded and should be developed because there is no great organization monitoring this whole thing. There is no authority that is responsible for whole villages. So you have got to up, that is each national section has to up their public education and their involvement and the infrastructure to be put in the villages. Mention was made of putting a pier, a jetty, in each of these communities, and also an information booth, for instance, manned by a villager, and encouraging villagers, as we have experienced in Dominica, to entertain and become tour guides and take people around. So in relation to this conference, I think it's very important that these things came to the fore. Another very significant aspect of this conference was the whole question of air communications, particularly, and linking the islands together and getting people to their destinations and connecting the region. These sessions that were held yesterday were very important indeed because they were twofold. We had the international airlines, the international connections that were coming in, American, Delta and the others, and then you had the other session with the smaller regional air connections and to see what was being done and the problems that were being raised. We noted today at the press conference that mention was made about the irritating matter of these ID cards. Now, I was a schoolboy in the 1960s having to travel back and forth to Barbados from Dominica. And in the 1960s, we were filling out these copious things. And we're still in the days of internet. You know, I was traveling before there was any internet connection. And I'm saying every time I fill out these forms that really and truly it's already there in somebody's computer. Why am I having to repeat it? And also, why am I having to give so much information? The CARICOM ID has a little tear-off thing at the bottom, which basically gives your name, your age, your sex, and that is about as much as you need, you know? So I think this conference brought to the fore significant aspects of tourism. The main three, of course, being that community involvement and education for authenticity, the international connections to the Caribbean on which the tourism is based, and of course the inter-island, inter-nation Caribbean connections, which are so important not only for Caribbean people, but for visitors who want to do 3 or 4 islands as part of one visit. You know, it's one thing to fly in on an airline into Puerto Rico and stay in Puerto Rico and go back. But if you want to take a multi-visit into some of the islands in the Leewards or Windwards, or even down in the ABC Islands, the Dutch, you've got to fit into that network. And that network needs a lot of work being done on it. And this conference brought a lot of those issues to the fore. So significant indeed.